Welcome to episode 105 of the Sports Geek podcast. This week I chat GIFs, mobile and Rip City with TJ Ansley from the Portland Trailblazers.
Welcome to the Sports Geek podcast, the podcast built for sports digital and sports business professionals.
And now, here's your host who will list 5 reasons to email him. You won't believe number 4. Am I doing BuzzFeed headlines here? Sean Callanan.
Thanks, DJ Joel. Yes, always be testing headlines. There's a reason why BuzzFeed is dominating the internet. So I'm not going to give you the 5 reasons to email me. You should have them by now, but you can email me, Sean at sportsgeekhq.com. My name is Sean Callanan and I'm the host of the Sports Geek podcast. Thank you very much for listening. You may be listening on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, or Pocket Casts, as I say each week. It is my favourite podcasting app available on iTunes and on Android. And as always, it's you can contact me, Sean at sportsgeekhq.com, or via the Twitter at Sean Callanan or at SportsGeek will get me. Before I jump into this week's interview with TJ Ansley from the Portland Trailblazers, I want to have a quick plug at the start of the show. If you are in Melbourne, November 23, Monday night, we will have another Sports Business Melbourne event. You can find out more about it either at meetup.com and look up Sports Business Melbourne, or go to sportsgeekhq.com/sportsbizmelb. I'm really going to focus on the summer of sport. We're going to have Australian Test cricketer, just recently retired Chris Rogers, talking about his transition and being a professional athlete in this day and age. And a few more looking at the NBL and the A-League, with everything firing up for a summer of sport down here in Australia. And a big shout out to my friends in the Northern Hemisphere as it gets cold. Todd, I know you love seeing all the photos that I share of sunny Melbourne. I will continue to do that as you send me photos of a very snow-swept Detroit, Michigan. Anyway, without any further taunting or plugs, I'm going to jump into this chat with TJ Ansley from the Portland Trailblazers. Very happy to welcome, it's taken a few attempts to get him on the line, TJ Ansley, Director of Digital Media at the Portland Trailblazers. Welcome to the Sports Geek podcast.
I'm happy to join there, Sean, and glad we finally were able to connect.
Yes, we had a few false starts in booking this, but happy to catch up with you now. First of all, you want to give us a little bit of background in your experience and your career in digital?
Yeah, sure. Well, first, coming out of college at Eastern Michigan University, I went right into an internship with the Detroit Tigers in more of a marketing promotions realm. That's how I kind of got my start into sports, and then evolved into I worked for a sports radio station there in Detroit as well after that, and that's what kind of spurred my grasp on digital media. That was when kind of websites were becoming more popular, not just a sounding board for events, more content, all that. Podcasting started to kind of really start to become more popular, and that was back in early 2000s. So that's what, like I said, kind of spurred my momentum into more, social media, website, building websites for more content than anything. And then after that, I kind of moved back to Ohio, where I'm originally from. And that's where I got a job at the Columbus Crew in Major League Soccer. And that's when Major League Soccer was kind of bringing all of their websites in-house instead of the Major League Baseball route, where they kind of have Major League Baseball advanced media. So there was a person for each club dedicated to the website, providing the content, being the managing editor, being active on social, just kind of creating that content for a club where we didn't have to rely on somebody else. And so that went really well. Loved doing, I wasn't a soccer fan before, but actually shout out to the Crew right now. They're in the Eastern Conference Finals, so hopefully they can keep going. From there, I got connected with Dwayne Hankins, who's my boss, and I know he was on your one of your original podcasts, which have yet to find, or didn't even didn't look at it yet. So, you know, I kind of got connected through him. He was with the Galaxy at the time, and we kind of had some, you know, crossed our paths here and there. And from there, he recommended me for a position here with the Portland Trailblazers, where about 2 years ago, a little over 2 years. And so now I'm in charge of everything from content to the website, digital marketing, all of our banner ads, all of the digital ads, and you know, mobile apps, video on the website. You know, it's a really big task, but we've done well so far.
Yeah, yes, Dwayne was one of the original guests on the podcast. He did the spot when he was back at the LA Kings and talking about the trash talking. I was lucky enough to been up to Portland a couple of times, seen the game in action at Motor Center, and then early this year caught up with Alexis Lee, who's a colleague of yours, works in the director of marketing advertising, and also Matt Gardner, talking about how the marketing is shifting. And I think I caught up with Alexis and Matt just after, you know, LaMarcus Aldridge left in free agency, which is a really big change from the roster that you had last year to this year, losing 4 or 5 starters. It's really now Damian Lillard's team. How has the shift changed from your department's point of view, from a content point of view, with this completely reframed, completely rebuilt team?
Yeah, and it is really kind of a new realm of Trailblazers basketball now. It's like you said, we lost 4 out of our 5 starters. I think 9 total players. So that's really unheard of in NBA world. So, you know, we have all these new players. How do we get our fans to welcome them as a part of the family? Portland's a really unique town, and you know, just so far this season, like you want to make sure that those players are part of the organization and part of the Portland community. So our job this summer was, you know, and we have really good content providers right now, and Chris Clovisto, Cody Sterrett, Casey Holdoff. So we got in early to our training camp and got to know these players. So we were doing feature articles on them, you know, their backgrounds. There's some really unique stories with these guys, and our fans just didn't know that yet. So we were able to kind of gather all that content within a couple of weeks, where we could hold on to it and release it when we needed to. So that was, you know, a unique case, which I don't know many teams have been going through, and our guys kind of just hit the ground running, and we got that information to our fans. So, you know, we're on a little bit of a losing streak right now, the new team, but we're you know, everybody's really awesome to work with as regards to the team itself, and they kind of write their own story. So we're you know, we love to provide content, and you know, the old term "content is king" is it's still usable. So we keep doing it.
Definitely, and it's very much the glass half full approach. I mean, because you've gone and, you know, you've got a completely new roster, so you have this, you know, open blank canvas almost to tell that story and say, oh, now we've got all of these new guys that the fans don't know, so we get to help shape the story. And then if the players buy into it, they also help shape the story as well. How much also, a lot of the things that we've discussed with Dwayne previously, and really got it really strong when we were at the Motor Center catching up with Alexis. How important is the Rip City brand and the Rip City culture a really big part of your content and what you're driving to do? And how did you go about trying to instill that into the players in all the content that you're producing?
Yeah, I think you know, Rip City is that term, and if you know, some of your listeners don't know what that is, it's actually a term that our first broadcaster coined back in the 70s. We were kind of losing to the Lakers at the time, which had Wilt Chamberlain and Jerry West. You know, that team that's always held up there is one of the best ever. And we made this historic comeback, and our broadcaster just said Rip City, and it just stuck since then. So that's what our, you know, I was alluding to a little bit before. Our fan base is really, really kind of a tight-knit community where, you know, we consider ourselves Rip City instead of Portland, really. And I think when Dwayne got here, we kind of brought that effort to not just Portland, Oregon. We brought it to Oregon and the Northwest region, where anybody can be Rip City. You kind of see that from other teams too. I think Charlotte's doing Buzz City. Houston is doing Clutch City. So you have that, kind of, I don't want to say manufactured sense of.
But you want to tie your brand into the city identity. I think I agree. That's what they're trying to do, and it's just the fact that you've got this really nice organic piece that's happened. It's come through the broadcast, but the fans have really adopted it and said, "Yeah, I'm part of Rip City." And so, from a content point of view, and the fact that I took a photo of myself in front of the Rip City, in front of the Motor Centre, where you had the Rip City sign there, where people can stand and be the eye. Like all of those type of things make it really easy for you to keep amplifying that message again and again.
Yeah, for sure. And we did some really good video content last year with our players. All the players were available to us. So before the season, we brought that Rip City sign around different places in Portland and a couple of different places in Oregon where players were there. We brought a ton of fans from that community, did a nice little piece in front of it with some really good some messaging behind it. It turned out really well.
And so this year, other than this, this new content play and telling the stories of the players, everything, all traffic, all people are moving more to the mobile. What are you doing in that space to reach and connect and engage with your fans?
We're always active on Twitter. We're never going to have the biggest following out there just because of the community size that we have. So our goal is to always be engaged with our fans, whether it's on our website, through social, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat's a really big part of what we're doing this year. Mobile apps, connecting to the Wi-Fi. You always have these touch points, and how do we, when somebody is logging in or tweeting or doing anything like that, what's the next step that we can do to be part of that? And I think we've done a pretty fantastic job so far the last couple of years of making that connection and keeping that conversation going.
And so how do you, one of the big challenges for all apps is building that app engagement and getting people to open up the app. We've all, everyone would be able to pick up their phone right now, look at, hopefully they're listening to a podcast on one of the things, which they obviously should be doing, but there's all these apps that they don't use. So how do you make the Blazers app an app that does get used, whether it's a game day app always or a in-stadium app? What are some of the things and tweaks that you've done to boost that app engagement?
Oh, for sure. We've partnered, with a really great company, Yinscam, which I know a bunch of your guests before that, a part of that. They use them as well, and they've been a really integral part of what we're trying to do with our app. Fans are really passionate about where they get their information from, and our website's been really great. We provide the greatest Trailblazer content, I believe. So bringing that content into a person's hand is what you need to do. Even though our website is responsive, our mobile app is a place where fans go. So we're providing written content, video, audio, any type of information you need to know about the Blazers is in there. But also, what happens when you go to a game? We want to make sure all of the pertinent information is there and all the greatest pieces of content or even just the amenities are in your hand. So you come to a game, you know exactly where to go. Click to bring up your digital ticket. You click in there and also go to, where do I find the hot dog and the popcorn that I can get. Well, so some of the other features we're doing in there is some real-time highlights. So, like I said, with Yinscam, they have a great system where almost instantaneously after a Damian Lillard dunk, that highlight's going to be in the app as long as you're connected to our Wi-Fi. which is a really great experience for people that are in the arena. Some of the other kind of newer features we're doing right now is in-seat ordering. I know many other teams are doing that right now, which we're kind of working this, the kinks out of that one. We're doing really well right now, but there's always that chance for some more people to order within the app and just make their life easier at the game. And one of the really new features that we're really excited about is sounds like a promotion. Sorry about that, but it's called FanScan. So we worked with a local company, and they have this really cool technology where you put a watermark over a printed piece of material, or even a watermark in the audio itself, and you have the app open and you scan that or have it listen to the audio. It will actually bring up a piece of content that's linked to that watermark. So all of our all of our printed magazines that we give out at the gate have this technology implemented on it. So if you're scanning the front cover of the Rip City magazine, you're going to get the game day hub, the game day piece of content that's going to happen that game itself. So you can, get to the game early, scan the program, and you'll be able to kind of see the stats of how the matchup happens that night.
So that's really cool. So that's really cool. So it's effectively, so it's gone beyond what we would have had, QR code and those kind of things having to be printed on the poster. It's just effectively embedded in and almost an Easter egg in the app. It's like, hey, we can send you to a secret part of the app if you take the scan, and it can be a premium piece of content, or send them to a special offer, or just a little bit of a hat tip to the fans saying, congratulations, you found this cool piece of content.
Yeah, exactly. And we're trying it with a few other pieces. There's some trading cards that are in we're trying to do with, if you click it, it goes right to a video of that player, or goes right to their roster page to kind of just dive deeper into that content. Our Blazer dancers, we're coming out with a calendar here pretty soon. We're doing a video piece on each one of the girls. Once you get the calendar, you scan it, and it goes right to the video to learn more. It just adds that extra layer that, just a flat piece of material doesn't provide, and this kind of just brings you to an extra level.
And that's the thing. I was really, I don't know if you caught the news just recently, Google are now, on Android at least, providing search results that open up an app automatically in search, even if you don't have the app installed. Having these light instances of the app to pretty much give the app experience. And I think that's going to be an absolute bonanza for people who are building apps and, wanting to drive that app engagement. If they can drive it straight from, especially mobile search, and it pops up and says, oh, this is what the app looks like. Obviously, it'll help with downloads. And if it automatically provides those, deep links straight into the app, that'll be terrific from a mobile point of view.
Exactly.
And what other things? What other promotions? You talked briefly there on Snapchat. I've been following the Trailblazers Snapchat game. How have you found sort of finding your way in that as a newer platform, and how the fans are engaging with what you're doing on Snapchat?
Yeah, Snapchat, as you know, and I've heard you talk to Brian from the Timbers, and they're doing a great job with it. It's a new platform, and it's kind of a younger audience, and I think that's what we need to reach towards. And, Chris Forvisto, our managing editor, is kind of taking it upon himself to kind of learn that platform and push the envelope with it. We're trying new things all the time with it. I think when we launched it, we weren't quite sure what we were getting into, but it was a new avenue that when we did launch it, we were actually unveiling our new court, which we did before last season. So, the idea of just, hey, let's unveil it on here because we don't have any followers yet, and make sure people follow that way. And it turned out to be really great. Snapchat's been evolving for the last 2 years, so we're still learning all the new features. And, we have a great intern right now that's kind of taking it upon herself, too, is to kind of push that envelope and create some new drawings and, different kind of stuff to promote the Trailblazers. It's been good so far.
And the thing that I'm really liking about what is coming out with Snapchat is it really suits people, like yourself, that coming from a content storytelling background, because it's a really good storytelling device. It's I always say when I'm doing a presentation, it's the only social network that shows a story consecutively, in the way that we always have watched every story. No one watches movies backwards, but every other social network provides all their content backwards, whereas you can pick up, after a Blazers game, and pick up Snapchat and get a recap of the story in the sequence that it happened. So if you have people, like Chris, that can say, I want to, tell a story in a Snapchat point of view, it's terrific. And then obviously more and more of your fans are going to be doing that themselves, telling their own personal story. So, it's definitely a way for teams to connect, with that elusive millennial audience.
Yeah, I mean, it was really interesting. That's a good point of topic too. Is last night we were one of the live stories from the NBA. So our game against the Rockets, which we lost from a heartbreaker, but it was a live story from Houston, and we tried to interject with some of our content and not just have it so Rocket heavy, which it should have been because it was in Houston, but we had some fun with that one. That was a good time.
So take us a little bit behind the scenes of that. Snapchat build out the live story. How much are you as a team involved in that, or is that getting curated from Snapchat and they're just pulling one or two pieces from team and official accounts and then a couple from the players? How's it sort of work behind the scenes?
Yeah, so what that does is they're taking all of the content that's being produced within the Rockets, the Toyota Center there. So they're pulling in all the fan content. There's some new overlays that they put on there. So it was it's kind of cool when you see your snap go up there. There was only maybe one or two of ours that was there because I think they were just trying to be fair with everything. Our guy, Casey Holdall, was actually on scene. He's our beat writer. So he took the snaps and did all that during the game, pregame, and it turned out well. Like I said, it was a little Rocket heavy, but you expect that when you're in the enemy territory, I guess you would say.
Yeah, I mean it is a very. I'm very interested to see how Snapchat, I guess, scale that to a certain degree. If they're going to keep doing all of these events and having people pulling together these stories, it's effectively what Twitter is trying to do in a curated way with Twitter Moments. How have you? We haven't got Twitter Moments. It hasn't been pushed out globally, but I do see the Twitter Moments being shared. How have you found that as a product, more so as a user, less so as a Trailblazer? Being part of the Trailblazers.
Sure. Yeah. Are you talking about? You're talking about Twitter Moments.
Twitter Moments. Yeah. How have you found that as a product, as a way to consume? Because effectively they're sort of mimicking what Snapchat are doing and saying here's all the content, pulling it from official sources as well.
Yeah, and it's. I don't think we've really got into it from the league perspective yet. I jump in there every so often when I want to catch up with some of the sports scores, and actually I was catching up with all the events that were happening in Paris a few days ago. So that's actually how I caught up with the news instead of going on to CNN.com or anything like that. So, Twitter Moments got me there. So that was a good representation of what that can do, where it can bring in video, it can bring in written, it can bring in tweets. So I'm really curious to see how far it can go. And I'm a middle 30s, so I'm more on Twitter than I am on Snapchat. So that's where I kind of got my news from. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, it is a news source, and I guess they're pitching Twitter Moments for is to actually broaden the appeal of Twitter, because we all heard the stats of 40% of people don't tweet, and they do use it as a news source and a way to keep track of their their sports team and get their news and follow the Damian Lillards of the world. I guess it's just another way when people get on Twitter and go, what is this thing? And they can sort of see it as a news resource. But the fact that it is at the moment human curated in that style, again, it becomes a scalability issue to a certain degree. What are some of the things, you talked a little bit about Snapchat, but what are some of the things that you are focused on for this season? Is there any particular theme or focus that you have for the season ahead?
I think, providing that best content, and that's kind of a generic answer. But, what's the next thing that we can do? What are the next apps that are coming out that'll help us tell that story? There's a few out there that I think we're kind of messing around with, how to create some of the best case scenarios. But, mobile apps, we kind of touched about that a little bit. Those are, one of our big focuses. We're hopefully coming out with a new Rose Quarter app, which is about our campus. We are unique where we have 2 arenas. So when you come to a Trailblazer game, you're obviously going to use the Trailblazer app. But if you're coming to a concert, you're not going to use the Trailblazer app. You're going to use a different one. So how do we engage those fans on that case? Digital ticketing is always, is the buzzword. Number of teams have gone paperless. So it's not to say that we're going paperless, but as I mentioned before, kind of making that app a go-to when you come to a game. Your tickets are right in your hand. You don't need to dig in your wallet for a paper ticket. You can you open the app and there's your ticket. So those are kind of the things we're kind of working on here, and just trying to make it an easier approach to our fans when they come to a game.
Yeah, and I also wanted to. I really liked the. You recently ran the pick which player is going to score the 100th point, allowing fans to vote on which player is going to score the 100th point in a game, and I think that they get a medium fries from McDonald's or something. So it was a really good commercial activation. How the fans sort of picked, go after a campaign like that, because it sort of gamifies what normally would be a contest.
Yeah, it's a little bit of back history there, which is kind of funny. When I first got here, Taco Bell was the sponsor for, I don't know, however long. And when we hit 100 points, everyone would win a chalupa, which is it's a funny word. It's like, there was a chant going along with it. So when Taco Bell left as a sponsor, McDonald's jumped right in because they saw the value in it. But you can't organically teach a fan base a new chant. So, we went through that process. We thought it would, work eventually. There's not really a chant, but, fans do go on to our app. They go onto our website. They select who they think is going to hit that 100th point. And, they do win. The person that we do pick from that wins prizes, tickets to a game or a Trailblazer backpack. But it is an engaging way to do it. It's right within our app. It's an easy click. All you have to do is basically press a button and you're voting. So it's been really great so far this season. We kind of reformulated the contest a little bit and made it a little bit easier to enter. So, like I said, it's been great so far this season.
Yeah, and one of my favourite sites this year, and I've used it in a few presentations since, was Portland Trailblazers presenting the year in GIFs. Do you want to tell it's absolutely, I love the site. Do you want to explain a bit of the background thinking of it? Because it is in that pure, let's engage our fans and have fun with our fans.
Yeah, for sure. We like to pride ourselves in kind of using GIFs during games. It's just a different approach to Twitter. Our tweets are kind of fun. And we also put out animated GIFs of our highlights. So we have a couple guys that are, doing this during the game. Justin Moulter, who's our video producer, sits there with us during the game. We're communicating back and forth. So during the year, we're actually grabbing all of these different kind of GIFs, whether they're highlights, lowlights, or even just kind of funny moments where, players dancing before the game. So we collected all of the most kind of random GIFs that we had all year. And we kind of mimicked the site that we found around the internet. And we, you roll over. I forget actually how.
I think it pretty much it was running. It was effectively running music. Like it was like a music video, and you could pretty much press any key on the keyboard, and it would fire up that GIF. And so effectively, you were just playing around. It'd be like you'd hit G, and there'd be Damian Lillard hitting a three. Then you'd hit P, and there'd be someone dancing, and it was just a really fun site for your fans, because they just would have gone, oh cool, and it's the whole digital rabbit hole. They just would have fallen in there and been in there for a couple, half an hour, just playing along. The music's playing in the background. that kind of thing. Really cool way of just engaging your fans and having a bit of fun, especially with the GIF space.
When we actually launched that, we did it in our group, and we were kind of messing around with the music to it, and then we put out the tweet, and you could hear people's music in the office kind of going off here and there. So it was a pretty cool moment that day when you hear some other people kind of going through that and having some fun with it.
Well, TJ, I know you've got to head off. You're heading off for your third birthday of your child. So thank you very much for taking the time. Wish him a happy birthday from us. People can follow you at TJ Ansley on Twitter, and I'll put links in the show in the show notes. Thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
John, I really appreciate it, and I'm glad we connected, and can't wait to hear it.
All right. Cheers, mate.
Sign up for Sports Geek News at sportsgeekhq.com/sign up now.
Thanks again to TJ Ansley from the Portland Trailblazers. You can follow TJ, funnily enough, at TJ Ansley on Twitter. I'll also link up in the show notes. sportsgeekhq.com/105 is how you'll find all the links to that episode. I'll link up to some of the things that TJ did talk about, and also put a picture in there of me with the Rip City sign from our earlier visit earlier this year. Question on the podcast: when was the last time that you ran a pure fan engagement activation? Just something to delight your fans, similar to what I was describing with TJ with the Year in Gifts mini site. Just something that put out there just for them to have some fun. Please, send them in either via email or send them and drop them into the Sports Geek podcast community on Facebook. If you go to facebook.com/groups/sportsgeek, ask to be added, and guess what? I'll add you. Just a quick recap from me. Last week, the UFC circus came to town, to my hometown in Melbourne. 56,000 people packed out Etihad Stadium to see the Rousey Holly Holm fight, and what a massive upset it was. I'm not a massive, I must have put my hand up, I'm not a massive UFC fan. I don't follow it as hard as some people do, but I was really fascinated with, I guess, the marketing, stadium activation initiatives that they did in the lead up to the event in Melbourne, how they went about engaging the local market. I went down and checked out the UFC fan village on the Saturday. So they had a whole bunch of activations around Etihad Stadium. They had a 10 o'clock weigh-in, 10 o'clock Saturday morning weigh-in, and it was a free entry. And they were encouraging people to register for the free fan event. And so, being Sports Geek, I always register to test these things out, see how they work, and it was pretty much a data capture form. They got my email and they got my name. They then sent me a QR code, which fascinated me because I didn't think that many people were using QR codes too much. But I saw exactly why when I got to the stadium. They had about 10 or so different activations, whether they be getting a photo with the belt or pretending you're weighing in or getting a standoff photo with a digital imprint of you standing up against Ronda Rousey. And each time the fan would go and opt in on one of those sites, they had to get their QR code scanned. So really fascinating, but event, really well-run event. One of the things I really did take away was the amount of staff they had. There was staff there helping people take photos, in front of the UFC sign and that kind of thing. So they really over-delivered from a fan engagement and a customer service point of view. And I think Etihad Stadium, speaking to Sarah Brady at Etihad Stadium yesterday, blown away by the response and the crowd and how well the event went overall. Then the other thing unfortunately I could not make it to the event, but the amount of coverage that was coming out of the event via Snapchat, I pretty much sort of followed along. Luckily enough to have a couple of mates there, Steve Vallis from Chunky Media and former guest Greg Oakford from Golf Victoria were both snapping away, sending through snaps of the fight, but then also you had the Snapchat live story, and it's really funny to see that content coming out and then seeing some reports, and I'll put links in the show notes of the UFC sort of saying, hey, we don't want people to be sharing the fight on Instagram, and I think that was maybe, due to the fact that most Ronda Rousey fights had been under 15 seconds previously. But they were trying to, and I think, I think Miles Harris in the Sports Geek podcast community sort of said it's like trying to stop a river with a hand. It's something that the technology and the rules around technology the law haven't caught up with the technology. But I think things like Snapchat and the ability for fans to share the content is one of the reasons the UFC has gone so well. So interesting to see how that plays out. You can't really play in a Snapchat space and then tell people they can't share footage. But it does make for an interesting discussion for us as digital practitioners. So at the end of the podcast, stay tuned. The Sounds of the Game, brought to you by UFC 193. Thank you for Steve and Greg for supplying those. One last thing, what's been working really well at the moment with clients is going through a little bit of a digital health check. Been doing this pretty much year on year with all my clients. And now what I've done is sort of built it into a bit more of a product form, and a bit more of a easy to consume as a project. So we've creatively called it the Digital Health Check. If you want to learn more about it, you can go to sportsgeekhq.com/digital health check, all one word. And what it really entails is a content audit review, looking at all your content you're producing, digital, social, EDM. First of all, and just assessing how much you're producing. And normally just at the end of that exercise, it's amazing how much content there is, and sometimes it blows away the digital team on the amount of content that they produce, and it sort of gives them a bit of a reason to say, see, this is why we say we're stretched. Which leads into a digital resources review and who's doing what and where your stretch points potentially are. And then who are you developing the content for? So doing a bit of audience analysis and development and trying to figure out who the audiences that are best being served and if there are any underserved audiences. Then developing some key audience personas. So when you're writing your content, you can then best say, I'm writing this for a 18 to 24 fan that is using Snapchat, that is following us Instagram, hasn't quite got fully invested into the team yet. How can we produce more content to reach that fan? You want to have those personas in mind when you're producing that content, as well as what you want them to do, what action you want them to do. And then what comes out of that, which is a real interesting byproduct, is a commercialization assessment to find out that you've got these killer pieces of content that are getting engaged by fans and driving traffic that are underutilized from a commercialization point of view. They don't have a partner. They're not looking. You're not driving revenue in for your team from that. So normally at the end of the assessment, we go, hey, look, here's 10 things that we can give to the commercial guys. We can tell them exactly how to sell it. And get a big tick in terms of bringing in more revenue from a digital point of view. So that's part of it. Then we look at the content publishing matrix, when, how often, why we want to publish on the different platforms, what levers we need to pull to get the results that we want. And then also looking at your data position from an email point of view. What does your data position look like? What's the breakdown of your fans? Where are the pockets of fans that you need to service more? And then, one of the things I'm really passionate about is getting the cheeks in the seats. So looking at your ticketing promotion, how you're going about doing it, what some of the things you're doing going forward, and then normally at the end of the health check, you can start getting into content brainstorming sessions because the gaps that you're not servicing either from a content point of view on the have you thought of this, to also here's a passionate fan base that you're not serving. Can we produce content for them? So we can get into a bit of a content brainstorming session to sort of really fill out your content and have your digital team, your content team really armed with what they need to achieve over the next 12 months. So go to sportsgeekhq.com/digital health check to find out more about that, or simply send me an email, Sean, SEAN, although you can misspell my name and it will still get to me, SEAN at sportsgeekhq.com will find me. Until next week, my name is Sean Callanan from Sports Geek, and you've been listening to the Sports Geek Podcast.
Like the Sports Geek Podcast? Find us on facebook.com/sportsgeek. Check out which teams work with SportsGeek at sportsgeekhq.com/clients. Please leave a review on iTunes. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/iTunes.